Okay, so what I'd like to do today is to talk to you about this Facebook page called Corfu Butterflies and Other Wildlife. But before I do that, I guess most people know about Corfu because of this book, in which Gerald Darrell speaks fluently, lyrically, about the wonder of the island. And I'd just like to say that it's true. It is an absolutely magical place. I've never ever been disappointed. I first went there in 1976, so over 40 years ago, and it is just absolutely astonishingly beautiful. But what do we know about this island? Well, there it is. It's kind of an odd shape. Here's Albania, here's Greece, that way is Italy. This is in the Ionian Sea, and it's not very big. It's 230 square miles. It's 39 miles long. At the same time, it's 17 miles at its widest, which is not very much, 135 miles coastline, and the highest point is Mount Pantocrator, which is a little under 3,000 feet. That's what, just under 1,000 meters, a kilometre. Climate, well, you can see here the blue is the average rainfall, so it's very, very wet in the winters. And it's very, very warm in the summers. And in fact, summarised here by saying mild rainy winters, hot summer, sunny summers. And the average temperature in January is about 14, and in August it's about 31. But not this winter. Now, this is quite unheard of. It was quite deep. This is, about a month ago, I think. And it's not been like this for maybe 35, 40 years. So it doesn't matter actually wherever I travel, climate change implications are forever being talked about, and I can't help but feel that this is yet another example. The vegetation, well, mostly olives, and that's because the Venetians encouraged the Corfutes to plant olives just about everywhere, and I'm sure that must have an impact on the local climate. We've also got these amazing cedars, and then the sort of the marginal vegetation is this maquis and garrigue, heath-type habitat, which is all forever being, dominated and changed by fire. So wherever there is fire, these plants have adapted to be able to cope with those conditions. And they're mostly restricted to the sides of roads or to sort of mountainous areas. Well, Facebook page, what's that all about? Well, in 2014, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And on about the 14th of this month, I had my operation. And on the 27th of April, I was making this page. And it's because the diagnosis and subsequent treatment led to the fact that there wasn't much you could do for about 3 or 4 months. You actually had to be at home, and I couldn't get out, and that was almost worse than going through the surgery, I've got to tell you. And so as a consequence, I was thinking, what can I do? And I suddenly realised, actually, through the medium of social media, you could actually have virtual exchanges with people and find out about the natural world. And I've been to Corfu a number of times with my family, and I thought, well, that's the place where I'd like to do it. So I did an invite to people. I set it up and said, look, I'd like you to actually post your pictures and tell me where you saw things, and I'll help you to try to identify things. And as a consequence, maybe I'll get a book out of this at the end. I've really got this sort of whimsical idea about writing a book about Corfu butterflies. And then I started posting some pictures. This is a weird thing for many people to know they're butterflies. The Lulworth skipper, that's a species that we find there. And silverwash fritillary. I mean, some beautiful animals, and actually I posted quite a few different photographs solely alone. And that was a little bit of an issue. I did a sort of Darwinian talk about a courtship between the ilex hair streaks, which I saw on a little daisy composite type flower in this most amazing glade. And I actually wrote a bit about the colonisation of the island by the geranium bronze, a species which I'm sure some of you know about. But I really wasn't attracting any interest, so I had noticed this butterfly picture on a butterfly gardening page on the Facebook for Corfu. So I emailed the chap and I said, look, would you like to put that on the Facebook? And he did. And here he is. This is a guy called John Den, and it was the start of an amazing relationship with John. He's a very, very decent guy. It really did a lot for him, because suddenly he started really piling the page with photographs of butterflies that he saw in his garden. And in fact, over a long period of time, he's been doing lots and lots of work on the butterflies. And look at this. This is from 2014 in August to June 2016. He's recorded over 10,000 individual butterflies in his garden. 44 species. That's what we have in the whole of Sussex. He's got them in his garden during that period, 18 months. He says that he's got 10 species which are observed less than 10 times. He considers them vagrants. The remaining 34 species regular visitors. Look at this one here, the painted lady. Over 3,000 individuals. Now, that's kind of weird, isn't it? Obviously, we know that's a migratory species. But 2,675 of them were in March 2016. So he was witnessing a massive migration of those species. And in fact, many people at that time were reporting stuff to the Facebook page. Because with John, so came lots of other individuals. And I was absolutely delighted when the BBC4 programme on the painted lady picked up on the fact, and they used our information. They came onto the Facebook page, they asked people to report, and they used that in that broadcast. So that was absolutely lovely. John has also, looked at, how many species during the course of the year. And as you can see, midsummer you've got lots and lots of species. Earlier on and later on, not so many. But this type of work, as far as I'm aware, is almost unique. I was just speaking to Chris here. This is Chris Little, who you'll hear about a bit later on. Chris works a lot of the time, or lives a lot of the time in Corfu, and he tells me that he records in his garden. But there aren't that many, and I think in part this is because Gerald Durrell scared so many people off and thinking that it was his kingdom that no one's ever gone there to look. And it's absolutely incredible what is available for people to see. Now, of course, the quality of some of the contributions I had were not exactly what I was hoping for. I wanted this to be about butterflies, but I had called it Corfu Butterflies and Other Wildlife. And so I thought, what can I do about this? How can I get more sort of butterflies in there? I really want people to focus on butterflies. So then there's people like this. This is the only photograph I've got of Jason. I've never met Jason. He seems like a really interesting character. I really want to meet him, but I was delighted because Jason started putting things like long-tailed blues and two-tailed pashas. And that was great because Jason's quite well informed, he knows his stuff, and he's bringing stuff to the page. And that was really very interesting. But Peter Sutton has done some fantastic work. Peter is currently writing a book on the natural history of Corfu. And one of the early things that he did was to do a literature search of all the species he could find. And at the same time, there's this guy, Janice, who has done a book on the butterflies of Corfu. It has its weaknesses and it has its strengths. One of the great things that it has is that they went to particular sites and recorded year after year. So they've got species lists from particular sites. And between them and what I'd done myself, we got this species list, and we got 86 species of butterfly in this tiny little island. And I published this, in fact, Chris just got it out now. This is the list that I use. And we published this on the page, and it's there for people to download whenever they want to. Of course, I help people identify as much as I possibly can. And if you are ever wanting to identify butterflies in Europe, this is the book that you want. You can't get it because it's out of print, but you can speak to Tristan LaFrancis, and through email you can get a PDF, and that's fantastic. I carry it around on my phone all the time. It's an absolutely brilliant book, and it really does help a great deal in terms of identification of very difficult species. Then here's Bob Giles and his wife Tricia. Bob came up with this incredible idea. You can have a fixed post in Facebook. And so here it is. This is a fixed post. It means that whenever you visit the page, there's always this one post at the top that everyone always sees. And so we turned that into the Corfu Butterflies Gallery. Every time we got a new species or a new part of the life cycle, we put that in. And that's really been very helpful because you don't even need a book now. You can go to what we found and you can try to identify from that. So we were getting lots of different things. Bob is also a bit of a maniac. He runs around like a sort of a headless chicken or even what's the name of it? Jack Russell after rats. Wherever you can find some sort of interesting species, he'll be there. So this contributor, Sue, saw these caterpillars, and I immediately thought, these have got to be glanville fritillaries. And Bob says, right, I'm on it, Dan, I'm going, and off he went. And so for me, remotely, here in England, being in contact with these people and then telling me what's going on is on a daily basis is an amazing experience. But also I really wanted to see if we could really get some interesting stuff coming from people, not just the regular stuff. And we were getting, by this point, lots of stuff coming in. So the southern swallowtail was a species which is, limited in its distribution in the eastern Mediterranean. And I wanted to know whether or not it was in Corfu, because I'd seen it when I was a child, 15 in 1976, and I only ever saw the one specimen, and that was high up in the mountains. My dad took me out on the day on a motorbike. We went up, and there it was, and I saw it. Was it still there? I didn't know. So I put this little thing up. This is on the 3rd of May 2014. Well, less than 3 weeks later on, there it is. Now, this is powerful. This is powerful. Suddenly we know that someone's seen this. They can put it through. I can have a conversation with them, and there is the species. That astonished me. We suddenly, I would say this is a kind of scientific discovery in a way, isn't it? Because we didn't know it was still there. There was no literature. When you do a literature search on butterflies of Corfu, it's very limited. It's all about people like you and I that go there for a holiday with our families, and they get an afternoon off to go and see what they can see. So this was really good. So we started, this is now Janice, who's there, and this is Chris, that man there. Well, this is fantastic because we at the same time we're beginning to think about this other species called the southern festoon. In Europe, in the west, you've got the Spanish festoon, which is fairly easy to find, but the southern festoon is again quite limited in its distribution, and we knew that it had been found on the island, but we were really not quite sure about where to look. And we went to one of the locations that was in the book, and we decided to have a look around there. Now, what pleased me immensely was that Yanis was, or Yanni, as people call him, is a great birder, and he sort of opts into butterflies a bit now and then. Chris, fantastic naturalist, and Cosmo here, he's a dipteris and a hymenopteris. So I felt this is good quality crowd to be around with. But it wasn't very long before this happened. But there it is. This time of year in April, it's astonishing. It's like you're in an English woodland. It's absolutely beautiful. And I was walking just along here, and I took that photograph. And I felt so much like it was an English woodland. When I saw this thing down on the ground, I thought, oh, it's a small tortoiseshell. But no, it was this incredible butterfly. And then we walked in this field. Do you remember this, Chris? We walked in this field, and we suddenly got some idea. I mean, I know that you guys are ISPB people, and I don't know a lot about the other people here, but you get a feel for habitat. And once you started to look around and see what the habitat was, we started realising there's other places we can look on the island, and then just about everywhere that we looked, we found the southern festoon. And we slowly began to dawn on us that the reason why we were finding this butterfly was because no one had ever looked. We were there in April when no one ever goes, because that's not the tourist season. So look, here's the egg, the caterpillar. It was great. I remember with the guy Peter Sutton a month later on the Gerald Durrell week, and he was saying, I'm not sure it's as common as you think, Dan. And I said, I think it is. I think the meadow we're in now, it's probably there. And we looked down, and there was caterpillars everywhere. So it was really interesting and a very positive experience, because you feel in some sense you're a bit like an explorer and you're discovering new things. So this has become a bit of a regular thing here. Yanis here again, and Bob Giles, and here this time we're going up to Mount Pantagruel. And what's amazing about Yanis is on his tours around the island, he whizzes around all the time because he's looking at birds. He sees things and he knows what they are. So here's a large tortoiseshell at Mount Cooley, and he puts these things up, and it really adds to the diversity of stuff that we're seeing. Here's the nettle tree butterfly. Fantastic experience. I'd only ever seen one before in Albania, and that was just a beautiful animal to see, along with the southern white admiral. But in fact, on here again, look, here's the southern swallowtail. But in fact, when you go there, it's almost like you're in the New Forest. It's incredible. It's absolutely beautiful, but no one goes there. In addition to these larger butterflies, there's also these tiny little things. And so I knew when I was taking photographs of this individual, in fact, this is a male and this is female. And I knew that this was something unusual. It actually was on the list. I looked it up with my Le Francais, and I found, in fact, that it was a Hungarian skipper. And the clinch was this. Look, the female here laying on Salad Burnet, which is a food plant of that species. It was fantastic to get that. These skippers are notoriously difficult to identify. There's so many stories. This is a little story I did for Butterfly Conservation. In the past, I used to do sort of comic strips every sort of Christmas time when there was not much going on. We were looking at the scarce swallowtail, and at the very top of Mount Pantagruel, which is there, I went up there one year with my family, and there they were whizzing around all up the top of the mountain, and there's a big telecommunications tower there. And hilltopping, which is this phenomenon where butterflies go up to the top because that's where they can meet their mates, so they're finding the most sort of high-profile location in the big landscape, and up they go. It's been suspected in this species, but never really seen, so there it was. It's amazing. But I guess the biggest story that I really want to talk to you about is when we discovered a tiger on Corfu. The plain tiger, it's an African species of butterfly. And this was quite an amazing thing, because I think this demonstrates how the community of people, by now we've got about 187 people who regularly contribute to this site. And this lady, Jane Wilcox, says, I've been seeing this large butterfly the last few days. It has a lazy style of flight. It's deceptively fast. Any ideas what it is? Well, it's the plain tiger. It's an African species. It must have migrated there. This is incredible, you know, because we'd only ever seen one of these before that Yanis had found a little bit earlier on. And so then, before I know it, John Denn's gone down there. He's photographed them, and he said, "Well, yeah, there are there then." And then, yeah, hey, look, this is Chris. He's absolutely astonishing with his photographs. It was an absolutely amazing thing. Now, I never went. I have to tell you, as this built up, as people were talking more and more about this encounter, I was thinking, I think I should go on a plane and get out there and see this. Because this seems to be a very unusual event. And look, here's some more stuff here. And this is Chris Little again, putting this stuff up here. And then look, here's Jan again. I think I've seen them laying eggs on something. Bob's saying, I'm seeing them pairing. And then I slowly begin to think to myself, actually, you know, I think I know what this is. So I said, is this the place here? And they say, yeah, it is. Look, this is it. So in my mind, I'm knowing what's going on. I'm thinking, so I'm saying, guys, you've seen them laying eggs. You know what they're laying eggs on. You better start looking for caterpillars. But before that happened, this was found. You're thinking, what's going on here? So there's people now, Tricia reports this. Bob reports he's found this the next day. What could it be? I mean, the thing about these monarchs is, as you probably know, like the monarch, they feed on milkweeds, which have got cardioglycosides in them, which are poisonous. So you don't really anticipate that somebody's going to want to eat something which has got poisons in their bodies. So we were all very puzzled by this until John Denn. I think this is like a B movie, sci-fi thing from the 1950s. This is what he got. Look at that. Praying mantis feeding on them there like that. So it was incredible, really, absolutely incredible to see this happening. So here we have a colony of butterflies with their predators coming in and taking them. Well, Janice was then starting to put these from all over the island. It wasn't this one location, Almiros, is that how you spell it? Yes. Pronounce it? Almiros Beach, yeah. It wasn't just the one location. And so it was really obvious that there was a big influx of these butterflies. And then I said, so look, you've got to start looking for the caterpillars. They must be there. They must be there. This is obviously why they're called tigers. So this lady said, I've got the butterflies in my garden. And we said, well, yeah, look what you've got there in the background. You've got one of the caterpillars. So it was, you know, absolute mayhem then. So then John said, oh, can I come to your garden? Can I have a look? And before you know it, they're back on the beach and they're finding the eggs. They're finding the caterpillars. Now, I'm only showing you a small percentage of these sort of messages that people were giving. I can't tell you the excitement that this seemed to generate within the community of enthusiasts there. They were independently going down. I mean, I must say that John Denn has got some eyesight problems that have developed over the last couple of years. Even he was going down there to try and see them. So it was really, really very exciting for me to hear this type of passion, this enthusiasm, coming back from all these people, several thousand miles away, or 1,000 miles away, whatever it is. Then, of course, this is Agios Georgiou. This lady, Candida, has got them now in the garden. She's really excited about it. And John goes down there and he thinks, well, I've got to identify this plant. And he brings back a bit of the plant and then he says, oh, I brought it back, but I found I've got a couple of caterpillars on it. So he then looks after caterpillars, and then the next thing we get is all of these reports about how big the caterpillars are and how much they're growing and all this sort of thing. And by now, look, this is the 6th of January, finally one manages to pupate. In fact, I think they both did. But it was incredibly difficult. He gave these really difficult sort of things to read because he was talking about how they were in the greenhouse and it was getting too cold and They wanted to see it. They became sort of emotionally involved, these caterpillars. So eventually they did, and here is the adult butterflies, and this is in February 2016, and they released them. And the whole experience was quite amazing. I mean, I did a kind of a very rough graph, and it takes this bell shape here. And so we can see here that the end of October is probably where they peaked. And we've got some idea about if it was to happen again, the good time to see them. Because obviously later in the season is when they're arriving. But what was amazing was that this is later on when people started dumping things on the site. And then I found that people were talking about how this habitat was being ruined for the plain tiger. So there was this real sense of purpose, of this belonging, this ownership, this stewardship that had come out of the work that we'd done on the page. And that was really powerful again, and I was really pleased about that. But no worries, look, they came back in 2016. Now this may be a regular occurrence, but up until now we didn't know. And again, I think that's rather interesting. So look, there are all kinds of comments that people have made about the site. I asked them, I told them that I was going to do this talk for you, and lots of them made lots of comments, which are really, really fantastic comments, and I've had to sort of narrow them right down. But the one thing which I love more than anything is by Jason, which he says the best thing about the group is that sense of community where everyone helps everyone else out, and it means a lot to me that that's happened. Really very, very powerful stuff again. I feel like I'm using that word a lot. So the future. In April, 4 of us are going to go there, butterfly enthusiasts from Sussex. 4 of us are going there because, of course, as I said, I go with my family, so I spend a day here, a day there. We're going there solidly to do what we can do. At the same time, there are people there who are excited about us coming, and they will be joining us. So we're going to go to see what we can, targeting particular habitats to see what we can find. I mean, ideally, we'd love to find something new. But there will be things that have not been seen in certain locations, and we'll really be into that. I'd like to see the establishment of regular transits. For those of you who don't know, these are standard methods by which we monitor butterflies, and because it's a standard methodology, you're able to compare from one location to the next. That would seem to me to be a really sensible thing to do. I'd like to see popular butterfly count. I mean, we've done that here in Brighton and Hove, following Sussex, and now there's a national big butterfly count. I've had some personal experience in doing that, so I'd love to see that happen. In fact, I've been to the Natural History Museum and taken photographs of all the butterflies of Corfu, and you may be aware that we've done a poster of the butterflies of Sussex. So all of that we've done that before, we can do that again and maybe encourage people to get involved. But I was talking to the last CEO of Butterfly Conservation today, Martin Warren, who's now working part-time for Butterfly Conservation Europe. And he sees no reason why we shouldn't form a society, Corfu Butterfly Conservation, and be affiliated with the European Butterfly Conservation movement. Because I think we're getting to a stage now where perhaps that's where we're at. And if we get all of that done, then perhaps I can write my book. Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, if there are any questions, I don't want to take up too much time, but yes.
This land you're talking about, is it common land or grazing land? Or?
It varies considerably. If you think about Corfu, most of it will be, some will be farmland, some of it will be, a lot of it is buildings for tourists, and some of it is, well, I don't know whose land it is, but, it's, Chris, would you want to add to that?
Well, a lot of the land area is cultivated for olives. And that's really quite dense, dark woodland. So a lot of the butterflies are on the margins of the woodland, and in people's gardens and along the sides of roads, really. So actually quite accessible. And then there's a whole habitat that is higher up the island, which we kind of call mountain land, which is this open scrub land with sort of limestone rocks. And a lot of that is just completely open common land. It may have some ownership, but it's not really in use. So you're free to walk over all of that. And that actually contains some of the more interesting species.
Yeah, yeah. You were saying earlier on about the nature of this group. I mean, one of the things, I never knew Chris until this group started, and I think that's just an amazing thing, really. That Chris lives in Norfolk, so he's come here tonight for this. I think it's amazing that we've discovered one another, and that we're friends, and we've discovered that we've learned about the butterflies of Corfu together as a consequence of this social media. It is absolutely amazingly powerful. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering, you mentioned that you think that climate change might be having an effect on the species that are seen. Do you think that there's a change in the composition of species that you're seeing already, or do you think that you've only monitored for too short?
Yeah, I don't think we're really qualified to be able to answer that question. But what I will tell you is that in the UK, where we're seeing like, for example, speckled wood moving north really fast, the comma doing the same thing. When you think about how in the last couple of years we've had the long-tailed blue on the south coast, we've had the continental swallowtail gorganus coming in on the coast. These are things that you can't ignore. These things haven't happened before now. So, I'm surprised in a way that that people don't see this more obviously. But I guess that mostly when I give talks of this nature, most of the people I talk to have got grey hair. Most young people aren't engaged with the natural world in the same way. And so it isn't something which is in their faces. So there's a job we've got to do there. Yeah, and I do think that there will be patterns and trends, but it's not something that we'll probably be able to show immediately.